Hello, my lovely library lions. Today I wanted to talk about the Shadow and Bone Netflix series that just released last Friday. I'm sure most of you watched it by now. I watched it all on the first night, and I have some thoughts. So I'm going to break the video down into parts, and let's get started. Just before we dive in, I'm going to say that there are going to be spoilers in this video. I can't do it spoiler-free, so if you haven't seen the series yet, and maybe if you haven't read the books, this might not be the video for you. The first thing I want to start off with is a huge props to the costume design, which is absolutely stunning. Every costume is almost exactly how I pictured in the books, unless it's better. The keftas are way prettier than what I remember picturing when I read the books. I love the attention to detail in the embroidery, that Genya has a tailor's needle, that the Infirni have fire. I love seeing Alina's different costumes where she starts in the blue and gold and then moves to the black and gold and eventually to gold and black, which they don't really explain in the Netflix series. I'll talk about that a bit later. But I do love seeing the keftas. I think the crows all had fantastic costumes. Jesper especially got to wear a lot of really fun outfits and he looked great. Kaz's costumes exactly how I imagined them. I liked seeing him dress up as a guard and we get to see him wear few different little disguises. That was fun. And Nej is a queen. She looks beautiful. The first army uniforms are good, but they're just kind of like standard army uniforms. There's nothing to write home about there. But I do really adore the costume design in this show. Along with that, the set design was amazing. All the sets were really intricate. They looked lived in. They looked well built. The music was beautiful. I would listen to that soundtrack on its own. It was absolutely gorgeous and really fit the series. I liked the instruments they chose. It was very sort of grand and big music. It's not what I expected from Netflix. And I actually thought the CGI and the effects were also well done. Like, I thought they were going to look really cheap, and they're not the best movie effects there are, but they are pretty good special effects for a Netflix show. And I think Netflix really made good use of its budget there. So all those things, absolutely love. The casting is also, in my opinion, some of the best that I've seen for a book to film adaptation. I think they hit all the characters on the head with who they cast. Freddie Carter is a perfect Kaz. I can't imagine Kaz as anyone else now. Amika Suman is the best Nej I could imagine having. Kit is so charismatic. He makes Jesper so much more likable. Jesper was already pretty likable, but he's almost one of my favorite characters in the Netflix adaptation because of how charismatic Kit is. And Jesse made Alina likable. I hated Alina in Shadow and Bone. I thought she was boring. I thought she was bland. I didn't think she had chemistry with anyone. And Jesse made her likable. She's still not the most interesting character in the show, in my opinion, but she is a likable character now. I think she has chemistry. I think she is a good sort of chosen one. She is funny. She's so pretty. And I like that they made the decision to make her half Shu and add that layer to the story. I think she had excellent chemistry with Ben Barnes when he kisses her and then he goes back for that second kiss. I wanted them to keep going. Archie and her also have good charisma, but I'm still not feeling Melina. I just don't think I'll ever feel that ship. I don't think it's a ship that I enjoy or that it's a ship for me, but I don't think anyone could have done better as Alina, honestly. I think Jesse gave her so much more. Jesse put in so much to a character that I feel wasn't maybe the best character there was in the show, and Jesse made her someone that I actually really enjoyed watching. I really liked seeing Jesse play that role, and Jesse and Ben Barnes playing off of each other, I wanted so much more of that. A sort of small thing that I liked in the show was that they did a different opening every episode, and I thought that was really cute. We got to see some different Grisha power being used to showcase the opening title screen, and I thought that was really neat. It was a really small detail, but I really appreciated it. The other addition that I really liked from that is just in the show was Milo the Goat. I think everyone likes Milo the Goat. He is so cute, and just watching Kaz with his very angry expression walking down the street holding a cute little goat was one of the highlights of the show for me. I have no complaints about Milo. I think he should be a recurring character. He should come back in season 2. He should have a whole episode devoted to him. We knew, obviously, going into this series, there were going to be some changes from the books to the show, that the show was going to have its own canon, because they are putting the Six of Crow characters into the original Shadow and Bone series, so there has to be some adjustments there for the Six of Crows characters to have something to do. And there were some cool things about that, and some less than cool things about it. What I loved was seeing the characters interact. I liked that we got these interactions between the characters from Shadow and Bone and the characters from Six of Crows. Some characters that we'd never get to see interact properly in the books. I really loved seeing Alina and Inej together, how much Inej fangirls over her and she loves her. That was so cute. I think Inej and Alina should be best friends. I liked Alina and Zoya and Inej all together when they have their one scene together. I thought that was neat. I liked seeing Kaz and the Darkling interact. Everyone was joking about it. They're like, oh, Kaz should hit the Darkling with his cane. And we don't get that, but what we do get was Kaz outsmarting the Darkling, which we all thought was going to happen, and then when it happened, we're all like, how did he do that? But that was maybe one of the best parts of the series for me. I liked seeing the two sort of dark emo boys face off and see what that was going to be like. But I thought it was really cool to see all these characters that everyone loves interact with each other in new and fun ways. And I think that's one of the best parts of putting these two worlds together, is that we got to see all these characters interact, and there was a lot of potential for fan service, and they didn't sort of shy away from that. That was super fun. So we do get some other sort of more curious changes from the books that I wasn't sure I was a fan of. The first one that I noticed was Pekka Rollins feels like an incredibly different character in the show. He is ruthless, and he's doing his own dirty work, and he's sort of not the old man who's just kind of, bossing around other people, making them do what he wants them to do. He's very much in it. He is threatening people himself. He is hurting people himself, which I feel is a disservice to his character when you look at his arc in Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom and Kaz's arc, and I wonder how they're going to end up doing that now. In that same sort of scene, we see that Jesper maybe knows something about what happened with Pekka Rollins, which is really shocking, because as far as the books tell us, Kaz hasn't even told Inej what happened with him and Pekka Rollins when he was a child. So maybe Jesper knows in the show. We're not quite sure on that yet. The other big change with the crows, sort of the three main crows that we get, is that Inej has a brother, maybe? She mentions it, and it's not clear if she's lying. It doesn't seem like she is, so she has a brother who was also taken by slavers, and maybe they're going to have to try and get him back at some point. I don't really know what the point of this plot is. I don't know why they felt they needed to add that, but it is significantly different from the books. Inej never had a brother in the books, and that was never part of her story, so it could be really interesting to see. It might be a little much. And I think that can sort of sum up a lot of the Shadow and Bone Netflix series, is that it is a little much. There's a lot going on, there are a lot of characters, there are a lot of plot points, and it feels like adding on another plot point that wasn't even in the books. You're kind of overloading your plate because you've already got so much going on. The change that I think made me and the friend who was watching with me most upset, though, is, and this is a pretty big spoiler for the books, so tune out if you haven't read the Shadow and Bone books, but call Me Aleksander. Okay. That is like a huge reveal at the end of the Shadow and Bone trilogy as the Darkling dies, and he's just gonna come out and be like, call me Aleksander 3 episodes in while riding a horse with it. Does he just tell everyone his real name? Like, does it not matter to him in this show? That was it. It really hit me when he said that. I was so mad that they changed that from the books. I don't think it's actually a big deal looking back on it now, but when it was just visceral that I hated it when I heard it. I was like, you can't do that yet. That's not time. It's not time. But, maybe it's not a big deal. The show is going to be different from the book, so it's not huge deal, but it's a big change, and it felt like a huge deal when I first watched it. We have the plot with the crows, and then we have the plot with Alina and the Darkling and Mal, and then we have the Helnik plot, which is at one point, at some points vastly similar to the book, and at other points vastly different. So they've changed Nina's character a lot to integrate the crows into Shadow and Bone, which I think is fine. She's older now. She's not sort of the young girl that Zoya is looking out for. She's over 18. She is doing her own work when she gets captured by the Drskele, and I think that's fine. I think those changes were fine. I think it was the most, honestly, to the spirit of the book when they did their own scenes. There are a lot of verbatim scenes from Nina's flashbacks in Six of Crows, which I thought was amazing. I thought they had really good chemistry as actors. I really liked the romance. I thought it was so cute. But at the same time, It's a lot. So they introduce you to all these characters. I don't know if Helnik needed to be in season 1 as much as I loved them. As a book reader, it was easy for me to be like, oh, this is this plot that happens here, and they're just changing it up a little in the show, but I wonder if it's too much for new watchers. It is a lot of characters at once. It's a lot of plots at once, and Helnik feels like it could have been left for a later season. It doesn't feel like it is integral to the story that they're doing with the Crows and with Alina, where they cross over. There is a little bit of crossover at the very, very end where we see how the Crows are going to meet Nina, but I don't know that it needed to be done there. I know they're setting up for Six of Crows, so they needed to send Matthias to jail, but I don't know if they needed to do the flashbacks right now. They could have done the flashbacks later. I did love it. I thought it was great that it was really true to the spirit of the book. I liked seeing their romance. I thought they had a good romance, but it was a lot going on at once. That leads into, can non-readers watch the show without reading the books? They can, but it's going to be pretty confusing. So I watched the show with my best friend who has read all the books, and then with 2 people who have never read the books before. And there are some things that are just never explained in the show. Keftas and the colors of keftas and the color of the embroidery are never explained. So they don't explain why the characters wear the colors that they do. A lot of the symbolism of Alina changing from kefta to kefta is lost because you don't know why it's important that she was wearing blue or why it's important that she switches to black. They vaguely explain it, but not in enough detail that I feel someone who hasn't read the books can easily pick up on it. The Grisha themselves and their powers and their orders aren't explained anywhere. It's sort of a figure it out as you go thing. We see very little about the fabricators and what they can do or any sort of thing like that. The heart renders are used a lot, but their powers are left very unclear. Obviously, the Infernai and the Squallers and that have very obvious powers. They can do fire and wind and water, and that's easy to explain. But it's never really touched upon deeply, and it doesn't feel like the magic system gets a lot of time to breathe. They just throw you into it, and you're supposed to figure it out. As a book reader, that's fine. I know what the magic system is. I understand what all these Grisha can do, and why they're wearing the colors they're wearing, and why the Fjordans hate them, and all that sort of thing. But as a person going into the show without reading the books, it can be a little confusing. So they don't explain any of that very well, and I feel like they should have spent maybe more time on that and less time on throwing in every character that they could throw in. The other thing I thought was not super well handled was the languages. So Lee Bardugo has made this massive world with several different countries, and there are so many different languages spoken in this world, and there are characters who can speak multiple languages and characters who can only speak one language, and that's not done very well in the show at all. So for most of the time, the characters speak English, and you can assume, okay, English is just the main language of wherever they are. So Alina in Ravka is speaking Ravkan, Kaz in Ketterdam is speaking Kerch. But they move between countries, and it just becomes, okay, well, all the Crows have to be able to speak Ravkan almost perfectly because they come to Ravka and they're having no problems. With Matthias and Nina, he can speak Ravkan perfectly because at one point she switches to Fjordan and it's subtitled, so they're speaking Ravkan most of the time, and he's fine with speaking that. He knows that language, which I don't know if he knew in the books. It could have been handled better. I get that they don't want to do subtitles a lot, so they just kind of seamlessly switch with English to wherever they are, but it's never really clear what language the characters are speaking, which is a shame because in the books, sort of that language barrier does have parts to play, and there are times when, you know, there's a scene with Alina and she's like, oh, well, I actually don't speak Shu, I grew up here, and it's like, well, everyone's speaking English anyway, so that comment doesn't really make a ton of sense. And there's old Ravkin, and it just feels like they shouldn't have maybe put any focus on the languages if they weren't going to try more deeply to utilize them. It ends up being very weird, and you're never really clear what language English is because it seems to vary from scene to scene, and that I felt could have been handled a little better. I think for people who aren't familiar with the books, it's maybe not going to make a difference, but it is a little weird when they switch to subtitling suddenly and they're talking a different language, but previously that language was just English. Overall, I really adored season 1. I can't wait for season 2. Again, I think the casting, the costuming, the sets, the acting are all flawless. I think those could not be improved. I don't think they could ever improve them. I think that even the characters I didn't like initially now have actors Like, Archie gives Mal so much charisma. I hated Mal more than I hated Alina, and now he's just kind of like, he's kind of cute. He's kind of cute. I still don't feel Melina, but Archie's kind of cute, so Mal is now kind of cute. I think the Crows were perfectly cast. I adore all of them. I can't wait to see them do the Six of Crows plot. As a reader of the books, there are a lot of good lines. You can get really excited when they say one of the big lines from the book. There's a lot of fan service. You get to see a lot of the interactions that maybe the books didn't have, and you're always wondering, what is Kaz and the Darkling? What if they met? What would that be like? I think they did a really good job making it new, but keeping true to the heart of the story. There are some things that they changed, and I see why they changed them. Kaz is a lot softer, and I think he had to be softer in the show. In the books, we can see into Kaz's thoughts, so we know that even though he acts cruel and ruthless and says horrible things, he has a soft-woo boy heart. In the show, they can't do that. We can't see Kaz's thoughts, so he has to be softer outwardly, or he just looks like a dick. So I've seen people complaining about that change, like Kaz would never be this soft, and he wouldn't be, but also he is deep down, and we don't have the benefit of seeing into his thoughts in the show. So we need to see him sort of externalize his feelings and his softness more than he would in the books, because otherwise we don't get it at all. And I think that can be said of several of the characters. They seem different, and sometimes the characters have to be different so that it translates to the show. Like with the Decapple painting, yes, Kaz hides it under his bed in the books, but then we wouldn't be able to see that he stole it because we can't see his thoughts. So sometimes changes had to be made in order to make the show watchable, and in order to keep the characters still having the same integrity without sort of having that inner look at them, and I think that was fine. I thought the show was really good. I just wish it had been more accessible to new watchers and new non-readers. I feel like there's a lot of things they could have explained, and I feel like they just threw so much at us. They threw so much world building and characters and everything at us all at once, and they didn't give themselves room to breathe. They didn't give themselves room to properly world build or build up these characters. A lot of it seems like it is made just for people who've already been invested in the characters, who have been invested as fans before. And as a fan, that's great. I love that. I'm happy that they catered to me, but I want this show to be really successful. I want it to get a season 2 and 3 and 4. I want to see Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom and King of Scars and Rule of Wolves. And we need to help new fans in order to get into that. So I feel like they need to do a better job in season 2 of explaining things and introducing characters and building up characters. I am really excited to see backstories that they do in season 2, because I feel like we need to get some more flashbacks from the Crows. We didn't get any Kaz or Nej backstory in season 1, which I don't think there was space to do it, but it does make them better characters to see their backstory, so I really hope they get to that in season 2. Overall, I would give the series like a solid 9 out of 10. I think it's amazing. I adored it. It was a super fun watch. There was obviously so much love and craftsmanship put into this show. All the actors were stunning with great performances, and just everything was so lovingly rendered. I have very few complaints other than that it was a little confusing. If you haven't watched it yet, I really think you should watch it. If you haven't read the books, read the books. They're amazing. Leigh Bardugo is one of my favorite authors. Other than that, I really hope everyone enjoyed it as much as I did. I hope we get season 2 soon. I hope they cast Nikolai and we get to see what he looks like. And thank you for joining me for my rave about Shadow and Bone, where I just kind of rambled on for about 20 minutes. And I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed talking about it, because I love talking about things that I love on this channel, and Shadow and Bone and Six of Crows are right up there in the top. Have a lovely weekend, and I hope I can see you again next week.